Okay, well, welcome to Watercolor Studio 42, and today I'm going to try to do a little bit of a sailboat here. I found this picture from the newspaper a while back, and it's a nice picture of a windjammer. They call it, I guess most boats that rely on sails and the wind, they have the title of windjammer. This has quite a few sails on it and some flags up there. You can't, unless you're doing a large painting, you can't get too fussy with it. You know, you have to kind of more suggested about things. The sails are always kind of a little bit sort of relaxed, and you know, as far as when you're painting them in, the sails almost make me think of like how you would probably paint the petals on a flower. You know, they're very puffy and soft and have a nice, interesting shape to them. So I put a little bit of this in myself. I put in a little bit of I use a permanent ink marker, so I put a little bit of the base in there, and just to kind of give me an idea of how to work around it. And then I always keep my white paint, my acrylic paint, white. I keep that handy in case I have to touch up here and there as we go along. So predominantly, I've got a lot of background in here, and in the photograph, it's not a cloudy day at all. There's not a speck of a cloud in the sky. So what I'm going to do is probably I'll add a little bit of texture of some puffy clouds or something across there, so it's not really too much of a solid plain sky. Now, when you look at it, the print is kind of like almost monochromatic, you know, a lot of blue, but it does have just a pinch of green in the sky. So it does have a little bit of a feeling of green, but you have to be careful about that, you know, because if you kind of lean too much towards green, then you start getting into maybe not so much the cloud color, but you're getting in maybe something that you do on the ground. So I'm just going to kind of go easy on that, and we'll use probably some of my some blue. We'll put some blue out, and I usually use phthalo blue, and sometimes I use cerulean blue. And sometimes for the deeper blue, I use ultramarine. But I don't think we need that at all today. We're going to just put a soft wash in, and then a little bit more contrast for the water. Now, I do the sky first. I usually do the background first and put that in. And then from there, we'll do the water part. And then the finale is to finish the boat off and give that a little bit of color. But even the boat itself is sort of white, so you got a lot of white in there with, you know, but it's a little bit darker shade than the sails are. The sails could almost, the sails themselves could almost be the white of the paper. Now, a lot of times, especially with watercolor, you can leave the white of the paper in. I know a lot of times when I do a plant that has white petals, I just leave the paper itself, the white of the paper, and you don't have to fill it in. Sometimes same way with snow. I'll put some cast shadows on the snow, but it basically it's the white of the paper that we save, you know, for white, as far as the white goes. The white is good too for touch-up. Sometimes if you go off a little bit one way or the other, you can always use the white to kind of touch up an area. Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to start off. And usually, because I'm painting in a larger area, I just use a larger brush. And with watercolor especially, I just wet the paper first, I just put a little bit of water on. You don't want to put too much water on because it takes a little longer to dry, of course. Now, when you're working outside, you're working out there in the sun and the wind and all that, and the paper's going to dry out faster. So usually I wet both sides of the watercolor paper so it doesn't dry out quite as fast as it normally would. But I'm just painting in around here, around the sails. See what we can do. Sometimes I put some seagulls in the sky, but you know, the seagulls are so far away they almost look like these little V shapes when you put them in. You certainly can't get into a lot of fussy detail unless the seagulls are, you know, up close to you. Let's get some of this in here. There's in the picture there is some land off in the distance, so I might put some of the land showing, just to use up some of the space there and, you know, have some sort of a contrast. A lot of times I put tape around the outside border, kind of make an imaginary mat for the picture. I don't have to worry. You have to use permanent ink now, so that if my brush goes over that, it's not going to blur. You have to be very careful with watercolor paper. Okay, get some water out. All right, now I'm going to take, I have some of that cerulean blue, and we'll put some in the center well here. Now, there is a pinch of green in that particular shade of color on the paper, the newspaper print. It adds some green to it. You can see the difference between the blue and some green there. But I don't want to get too much green in there if I can help it. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more blue in there. Yes, the dad's tad more. There we go. Don't have to use too much. That's the beauty of watercolor too. The paper, it spreads around pretty good. You don't have to use too much. Get a little drop in it here. I'm going to just pinch that off. There we go. Don't want that to go too far. All right, put that over there for now. Now, what we want to do now is start off with a larger brush that we may have, and I'm just going to put some of this soft blue wash on your paper. Now, if I want to show some clouds up in there, I just let the clouds show through. Sometimes the clouds have soft edges, so it just looks a little bit lighter here and there. Here's the ground line across there. It's almost 2/3 sky and 1/3 water. I refer to the water as being the ground too. Okay, get some wash in here, up around the top. Now, watercolor does dry out very fast, so a lot of time when you're painting, you have to go a little bit darker than usual because, like I said, you look at it the day after the paper's really dried out quite a bit. It looks different. Okay, get some more blue down in there. Okay, now you can go, I'm being very conservative about that blue today. I got a big tube and squeezing out just too many little drops of paint, I guess, one way or the other. I'm just going to go a little bit darker near the top. Just a little bit darker shade up there near the top of the paper, just to give it a little bit more contrast. Okay. You see how that works? We'll go over here. I might put a little bit of land in there as we go along. We'll see towards the end of the picture. Okay, coming across. All right, now we got the probably 2/3 of the paper is going to be the sky, and then this lower area here is going to be the water. Now you don't want the water to be on the same line as the base of the boat. You know, they call that kind of converging too much with lines. So I'm making the water line just a little bit higher. And I'm going to add a little bit more blue. I'm trying to be a little bit easy on the blue. I don't want to get that too dark. So down here, and if you want, that's up to you, but you can put just a little pinch. You don't even have to put any green into it. You just take just a pinch of yellow, and we know yellow and blue make green. So let's try that. See what we can come up with here. I've got some blue all over the place here. So we're going to just stir it around. Get some more blue in there. I want to get it a little bit, oh boy, predominantly more blue. I don't want the water to look like it's yellow, you know, so we're going to add a little bit more blue. This tube pinches funny. Some of the paint in there is kind of settled in quite a bit. So here we go. Let's see if we can get some more color into that. A little bit more blue into it. I'm getting more blue there than I am here. I don't want it that green either. I'm leaning a little bit one way or the other. So let's put a little bit of that on the side. Let's thin that down. And what I'm doing here now, I think that I got a little bit too much yellow into it. Now let's give it a little bit more blue. See if I can work this thing out so it looks the way I want it to be. Okay, now it's getting too much blue there. Okay. It's always fun mixing paint sometimes. I usually take a scrap paper and just, you know, test the color out, make sure I'm on the right track with my color. Just test it on a piece of paper. Let's see how that works. I think we're getting there. Probably water it down a little bit more. Okay. Now, I'm not trying to match that particular color of the newspaper color, but just a little bit more yellow. And we're just going to put that across the bottom. A little bit of that. Okay. Now, because it's water, I can go kind of back and forth with that, the way the water would probably be moving. Get a little bit more up in here. There you go. And up around the boat. Now we're going to see some water back here. So we'll put that in. Make sure that ocean line is fairly straight, otherwise it looks like the ocean is going uphill or downhill. Let's get some more blue into that. Okay. Oh, I'm having fun with this blue, huh? Really tricky here. Oh boy. I'm trying to look at this and look at that, you know, kind of match it a little bit. Okay. Get a little bit more water on the brush. I don't want to paint the table too much. Let's see if I can get this onto there. Go right to the edge, right out to the edge. Back and forth. Sky can be just sort of loose. Kind of keep it kind of soft. The water you can show a little bit more of the contrast in there, like I just did. The movement of the ocean. If you're doing a lot of waves sometimes, you really have to spend a lot more time doing the individual little shapes of the water. Movement of the water. I'm trying to get this in there as best I can. Straight across. Yeah. And coming down here, pulling that in. Back and forth with the ocean. Kind of move with the way the water would be probably moving. Now you can specialize in doing pictures, seascapes, landscapes, and whatever. Some people just specialize in doing all the different types of lighthouses. You know, the way they paint the rings around the lighthouse. In fact, I got one on my shirt as a lighthouse today. Right across through there. And see where, yeah, well, it comes down pretty much into the boat area. There's a lot of little fussy detail that's kind of in there. Yeah, right out the back here. But make sure that water line is nice and straight across. Sometimes I put a ruler on or something. I got my ruler hiding underneath here. And you can just lay the ruler down and you can get that line fairly straight there. You go right across. Okay, like that. Lift the ruler up, you get, oh, almost a straight line. Sometimes you have to leave that, let it dry a little more. You know, let's push some of that around. Yeah. Sometimes you can have, like in the ocean especially, you have a cloud bank or some mist moving in across. Way off in the distance. There you go. Okay. Now, I'm just going to get down on the bottom edge here. Sometimes I make, in the foreground, or at the base, I should say, of your picture, I usually make that a little darker. Kind of. You can have the water, the movement of the water moving towards the boat, so your attention is eventually going to be looking at the boat, not so much the water. Let's get this over here. There you go. I just like to just go right off the edge. Take the paint right off. And then when you get it looking the way you kind of like it to go, you know, then we can start doing something else. But what I'm doing now is kind of trying to get some texture in here while I let everything else dry out a bit. Just let it. A lot of times when an artist does a demo, if they want an area to be drying out, they'll start talking about some other, or show you some other examples of some of their other artwork. You know, I happen not to bring something with me today, so I figure I'm going to spend some time getting this texture in. Okay, and get that in there. Now, when you do something like this, eventually, I've got to go to a much smaller brush to get all that fussy stuff in. And I say fussy, it's just a little texture, you know, some of the... You can't go into an awful lot of detail when the boat's that small and that far away. And just trying to make this look good around it. Let's put something out here. I see in the picture it has some dark shades in here coming in. And there, it does have some land, there is some land off there. Right about up in there somewhere. We'll put some land in there eventually. Okay. Get that going. This is really trying to, it's not so much about the boat. I mean, the boat's, of course, the focal point and the subject matter, but you want the, you want to have the background look good too. So much of it, you know, around the boat. And I want to let that dry in there before you start doing anything fussy. Otherwise, it's frustrating if you paint into an area that's still wet, and then it starts smudging. I may have a little bit of paint, some of that green on the brush, so it might show up in the... Yeah, I see it shows up a little bit there. It's just carrying that color that we have on the ocean up in the sky. A little bit too much white in there. Whoops, get carried away. I don't want that much green in there either. Oh, let's just hit it a little bit. There, take that out. Get a little bit more blue in the brush. Should be okay. That should be okay. Oh, wow. You don't want that. Just erase that, push that up further up into here. Take that out of there, get it, put it across the top. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Now, what I'm doing here is, if we put the picture, my little clipping from the newspaper up against it, we're getting pretty close to a little bit of the color of the what the actual picture is. Now, if you were painting outdoors, it would be kind of quite a bit different as far as your color goes. You're interpreting, trying to make the color as close as you can, maybe to what's out there. But the thing is, the word they use for that is called local. In other words, it's near local. It's not that far away from what it really is. So they call it local color. Okay. Now I can always come back a little bit later, and I can always do a little bit more with this, as far as adding another a glaze of color over what I've already done here. So that's the way that works. But if I keep wetting it, I'm not going to let anything dry. So I'm going to just touch it up with a little bit of the brush being drier. Yeah, something like that. And maybe if it's dry enough later on, I'll put some a real contrast in there of some little bit of a land projecting out back there. Looking pretty good. I always try to make it a little darker at the top, a little bit more of a darker color down here so that you get a good foundation for your picture. And if you can, just have the water kind of acting as a kind of a pointer towards the boat, you know. So you make it move in towards the boat if you can. Yeah, something like that. Okay. All right, now we may have to kind of let this set up a little bit. That's why I'm going over it with pinching the brush out, usually the brush almost like a blotter. And now I could just, we don't want to keep the boat exactly white. So now what I have to look at the picture, and now it seems like it should be sort of a little bit of a shade darker in places. Like right through here, we can put some color down in there. And up, you know, this is towards the bow, the front of the boat. There you go, something like that. And if there's anything that needs to be blended out, you take some of that water and paint and kind of soften that around the base of the boat. It looks like it's kind of light up on the bow. Okay, something like that. Put a little bit of coloring in here. That can be a little bit more towards gray too. It doesn't have to be as blue. Out here. Okay, I'm still using a big brush. Now, for all this little fussy stuff, I'm going to eventually, sometimes I just use a very thin marker, and I just kind of freehand some of the what's up in here, if it's dry enough. And make sure it's dry enough. I'm going to sort of blot it out a little bit, something like that, and whatnot. Help dry it faster. Of course, at home you can use a hair dryer on your picture too. You can use a hair dryer. I do that. Sometimes I don't use it so much when I'm doing some of the shows. Some people don't like to listen to the sound of there's a little ladder that comes down here too, rope ladder, and there's a lot of little fussy stuff that needs to be done. If I'm going to do some land, if I do put some land in, it's going to be off in this area. In the picture, it sounds a little low, but I put it up in here more. But that's going to project out into here, kind of go out that way, and maybe some of the top edge of it coming up that way. That's going to be where, if I put some land in there. You can put something way off in the distance, maybe off over in here. You can have something else show something else off in the distance. But it's so far away, it doesn't have to have that much detail. We're going to have, there's a little bit of a suggestion of a rope ladder coming down through here. We're going to have some lines for the, to the sails, and then the sail is going to be one. You're going to have one over in here somewhere. You're going to have another one that's up above. The shapes are a little bit kind of irregular because of the position. And then you're going to have something else in here. I'll fill that in with probably white. And then there's another a larger sail that's on over here, right in there somewhere. And that comes down, probably down in there. Then we have some other little things that up in here, crow's nest, I don't know, maybe something like that. And then you get the continuation. And we're going to just hint. We're just going to put a little hint of maybe some flags up on top. A little bit, you might notice a little bit of the cabin in here. There'll be some little like dots or so for windows, things like that. But some of those things are going to be so small, I'll probably have to put them in with a pen. Let's see. Yeah. So what we're doing now is letting this dry out a little bit. It's going to dry out a little bit, and then we'll come back and work on it. Like I mentioned earlier, you put a hairdryer on it. If you're outside, it's going to dry in the sunlight pretty fast. And if you need any other, I put it near some heat. Like if I'm painting in the house, sometimes you can put it near a window, or if you have a baseboard heater or something that you can put it up against. But you have to be very careful, because once you start working on some of the fussy work, it's almost impossible to put anything in until it's real dry. So I do have a fine pen here. Also, I do have somewhere, I thought I had a regular ballpoint pen somewhere in my collection here. Sometimes I use that. They do have some extra fine markers. If I was doing boats and ships all the time, that's pretty fine there. Not bad. If I was doing ships and stuff all the time, I'd have to have all sorts of thin markers to do all that rigging and so forth on the boat. Sometimes I use a ruler. Sometimes when the sail, the beam there, it comes out, I use a ruler just to make the edge straight. Like if it comes out like that, I use a ruler for that. For some of the ropes, I use a ruler for that also. Some of the ropes come down. All that fussy stuff, so I usually save for the end. That's the finishing touches to the boat. And also, as this dries out, we can start thinking about maybe using a smaller brush over here, something like this. And the boat may have a darker cast shadow around the base of it here. If I can get some of this paint. Oh, there we go. Get this out. And right in here, well, I can get that in now. We could show some of that cast shadow around the base. Put some of that right in there on the boat. We can add some of that right now while it's semi-dry. Okay. Doesn't have to be very much. Just enough. Just to show a little bit of the shadow of the boat. And a lot of times I take some of the color that we have here, and kind of put just if it's time to set up, you might be able to start putting a few little suggestions of the water movement in here. Just a slight hint. If those lines are too heavy, what I have to do is I take a big brush. Sometimes I have one of those powder brushes, and you just go over that and kind of pull some of these out, soften some of them. Some of those marks that you put in, you just pull them out. Something like that. When you doing your picture. Okay, so we'll see what we can do with some of this detail. I think probably I could make that mast pole just a little bit. It's a little bit heavier in here. I wonder if I can get a ruler on that. See what we can do with it. I'm just going to make that pole probably just a little bit thicker in there. Let's see what we can do. I don't want to goof it up too bad, but maybe a little bit in here. I don't know if that helps. Not really, no, it's not showing up yet. Okay, this one can be a little bit heavier too. We'll put that in. Sometimes you have to use a ruler and maybe a pen rather than a brush. I think I could get that a little bit darker there. Let's do the same thing with this one. It's a little bit darker. See what we can do. Now it shows up a little bit more. I don't want to get too crazy with that though, because I really don't have probably maybe sometimes the right thing to use for it. Okay. A little bit on the bow. It has a lot of rigging. Maybe put some of that in. Yeah. Some of this texture down there. Still a little bit wet, so sometimes when you're using a permanent marker, it might not show up as much. So you might have to do something else, let it dry first. I don't know if I could put some of that rope ladder in there or not. See what I can do. Gives a little bit of texture. Something a little bit like that. Okay. Yeah, it's still a little bit on the moist side. So I think I might be able to get some of these sails, some of the shapes in. Let's see, let's pick on this one. Nice little soft curve to it. We'll do this one up here, just a little bit of a line in there. Okay. Up in here. All right. I think this one I'm gonna bring that down a little bit out this way. That's going to be attached over here. Okay. So some of this gets a little bit fussy. I think I can show maybe a little bit of the flag. I'm just going to put a little bit of a contrast in there for that. And the other one over here is one just a little bit higher up in there. Okay, something like that. Now, I'm still dealing with letting it dry. I hope that's all right. You put some ropes in there. Water ropes. I usually, when I'm doing like ships, sometimes I skip a few places here and there. But like I don't think it's overly noticeable because you're doing so much of the ropes that somebody would have to be really an expert to pick you up on it. They'll say, oh, well, you didn't have a rope running to such and such, and whatever. Put a little line in there, maybe. All right, a little darker. Not showing up too good because the paper's still wet. I'm going to put a little bit more and get some of this Payne's gray in there. Just a speck. Just a speck of Payne's gray. And let's see what that does. Just wet it. Put a little bit in the well. You don't have to use too much of that. But somewhere down inside here, I'm just going to put some shading. Just a little bit of shading through here. Of course, you know, you got the cabin in there. So you're going to see some of that. Let's put some up in here. Put a little bit on the side here. This is a little bit fussy work, huh? A little bit tricky. Okay, that's a little bit dark. We'll just pull that down. Okay. Now, a little bit later on, I think with some of the sky and the water is showing through, so that's where white comes in. Let's put a little bit more white out. Let's see. I got to fill this in right in through here. Fill that in. Okay, you know, we've got a little bit over here. I'll make this show up a little bit more. This sail in there. And we got another something over here. We got plenty over here, huh? We'll put this in. Okay. Something up in there. Okay, this is all kind of fussy stuff. A little bit in there. Okay. You get a little bit, it's got something up in there. We got this big sail over in here to fill in more. And smooth that off a bit. Okay. Now we're going to also, by the time we get through here, we're going to have to add a little bit more of that Payne's Gray that gives the sails a little bit more contrast. You do, let's see, one, yeah, this one up here. And it comes out this way. I think we got, let's see. I'll fill this in a little bit more. Gets a little bit fuzzy, some of the sails, but we're going to let that dry. And I guess while we're waiting for that, let's put a little bit more of the land in there. I think I can take some of this color, use some of that. And we're just going to have, turn this around a bit, make it easier. The land's going to come out a little bit like this. And we're just going to pull it back. Okay. Get a little bit, I'll touch that up. Yeah. Now, I don't know if I want to put a little bit more land off here or not. Over here, I suggested, I talked about doing it. Put a little bit in there. Okay, I don't know if I can get a little bit more of that texture. Just a little bit more with the water. Using some of the gray now, that Payne's Gray, just to get more of the shapes of the water. That's too dark, of course. We'll take some of that out. See, it's still a little bit wet there. That's why it does funny things. Okay. I'll blot that a little bit. All right. Yeah, because this is kind of a little bit of a lighter painting, I hope it's showing up a little bit more on TV. What I'm trying to do, I'll finish off a little bit more of this now that it's a little bit drier. I tend to, normally I would let it dry out quite a bit longer. But, you know, we've got about 5 minutes left here. Get a little bit more in there. You're going to have a little bit of cast shadow there, a little bit around the bow and the stern. The stern, maybe a little bit more out here. Okay. Now, you can let this dry out more, and you can keep working this and put in as much texture as you want. I mean, there's quite a bit in the photograph, obviously, but I never really paint that much of the texture in, no matter what it is. I usually do paintings when I do a lot of seascapes. I just do a lot of rock and the waves, you know, spraying off the rocks. Like that. Okay. Now, if I brought it regular, sometimes I just use a regular ballpoint pen. Probably, I don't think I have one in my, maybe something like this one. I don't know. I think that's going to be a little bit much, so let's see if I can put more. No, that's still a little bit wet for that fussy stuff. Just going to put some texture in there. A lot of little things along through here. This sort of, the end really sort of fades away quite a bit. End of the boat. Now what I really need to do is sometimes give it a little bit more time to dry. And put a little brush here. Just want to put just a pinch of color through here. Oops. A little bit there. And we'll put a little bit of blue on this one. Just a little pinch of color, just to give it a little bit more contrast. Now, if that shows up too much, I just blot it, soften it down a bit more. Or, if it's too much, I just white it out later on and redo it. Now, the only thing that I need to do now is to probably, I'm using a pencil, usually I use a fine tip marker, but what I have to do now is just add just a little, if I can, a little bit more of the rope, just the rigging. And it's got plenty of rope in there. And I just wanted to show a little bit more of an outline of the sails. A little bit more of that. And you got some rope coming down in through here. There's another ladder that goes up into there. And this could be a little bit darker through here on the mast pole. So it's just a matter of just putting in a little bit more texture. Now, you know what I'd have sometimes? I use my magnifying glass. And I'm looking at everything, all the little fuzzy stuff. And there's little specks there, here and there that you probably will touch up. I got a couple of specks here. I'll just touch up with that, or just wiggle it out with the brush. But I want to make sure I got a clean brush. I don't want to be pulling this out. That's the beauty of watercolor. It does erase. You can erase it here and there, so it doesn't hurt. But yeah, there's a little bit of more contrast that I need to put in the picture. But nevertheless, we'll let it dry out a bit, and I'll bring it back next week and show you how I finished it off. Okay, so thanks for being with us, and brush it up, and we'll see you next time.